Everybody stop what you're doing, please!
When it comes to remodeling and renovating your home, there is no better show on your radio. This is Around the House with Eric G.
Where's the hammer?
From your back fence to the sidewalk, Eric will tell you how to keep it all in tip-top shape while helping you save a buck while doing it. If you like DIY projects, it takes a lot of practice to get good at it, and Eric is here to guide the way.
Is it on the, go up on the other floor. Somebody go up there and stop the hammering.
All that and more on the fastest 2 hours of home improvement radio.
These are the wrong plans. These are the old plans. Oh!
Welcome to
Stop it!
Around the House with Eric G.
Welcome to Around the House with Eric G. This is our Pro Insider Special. This is our new show. It's going to be happening every single Thursday. I want you to take a listen to. This here is going to be where we talk about the construction, residential construction, kitchen, bathroom design, all the different stuff of your residential home for all the people out there that are working in the trades. Maybe you're a contractor, maybe you're a designer, maybe you're an architect, maybe you're all three. This is going to be for you. Well, we've got a special one here for episode number 1, my interview with my friend, Walt Tomala, TNT General Contracting. Let's get out to Walt.
Thanks for having me, Eric. How you doing, my friend?
Good, brother. I know these are some crazy times out there. I know you're on the East Coast, I'm on the West Coast, but we're all kind of managing to survive at this point.
Absolutely are, and it's definitely strange in different times for all of us. And I think it's just one of those things where the world just tells you to step back and refocus a little bit on family, on health, and everything else that's going on around you, and gives us a chance to relook at our businesses and how we're operating as well. Absolutely.
I mean, it's different. It's times that I've never been through, but at the same point, I think I'm really, really enjoying the part of the refocus for me, and to be able to stop for a minute and hit pause and kind of look back and go, okay, what are we really doing here, if you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
So what's going on in your world out there for contracting, man? I mean, you've got so many different projects that are going on out there that I really appreciate. I mean, you have your hands in so many different things. Let's talk about your business for a second, just kind of what you tackle out there.
Sure. So TNT General Contracting, we've been around for 27 years now. And when I started off, I was doing screen doors and window installs and roofing and such. And I realized that when times got tough and the economy was up and down, wherever you went, however you looked at it, some essentials just were always there. So they've stayed a part of our building process at all times. So the windows, the roofing, siding, interior work, bathrooms and kitchens and such. And we do a good deal of remodeling. It gives us a chance to relook at our businesses and how we're operating as well. Absolutely.
I mean, it's different. It's times that I've never been through, but at the same point, I think I'm really, really enjoying the part of the refocus for me, and to be able to stop for a minute and hit pause and kind of look back and go, okay, what are we really doing here, if you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
So what's going on in your world out there for contracting, man? I mean, you've got so many different projects that are going on out there that I really appreciate. I mean, you have your hands in so many different things. Let's talk about your business for a second, just kind of what you tackle out there.
Sure. So TNT General Contracting, we've been around for 27 years now. And when I started off, I was doing screen doors and window installs and roofing and such. And I realized that when times got tough and the economy was up and down, wherever you went, however you looked at it, some essentials just were always there. So they've stayed a part of our building process at all times. So the windows, the roofing, siding, interior work, bathrooms and kitchens and such. And we do a good deal of remodeling. We probably do 20 to 30 exterior projects every year, from outdoor living to exterior repairs and such. And then we do probably 20 interior remodels. We also do new construction. We have a development going on in Southwick of 72 homes that we're one of 3 builders on this program. And then we also do commercial work. We love restaurants and such. So again, I wanted to be diverse so that no matter what part of the industry got impacted, I still had an avenue for revenue to be coming in and to keep all my employees busy. So you're right. We've got a lot of things that are going on, and it's funny to see how each one of those areas are impacted here in Massachusetts anyways.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's wild. When you're out in Massachusetts, of course, I'm out here in Portland, Oregon, but there are so many things that are happening that are similar right now in our worlds. And then there's other states like Michigan and Washington that are much more shut down, what's going on. But enough about that, really. What are you seeing in building technology right now? I mean, you and I both, how we know each other is we both speak on the stage at all these different, remodeling and building shows across the country. And we get to go hang out and do our thing and have a good time with the team. But you do a lot of stuff like, at the IBS stage this year, you were down there, working with a bunch of companies, but primarily you were on the Dupont stage, which was cool.
Yeah, so we do work with a few different manufacturers as far as the research and the development. And it's all about, building better products that make the buildings we build better and more efficient and healthier, more comfortable for the clients at the end of the day. So you're right, the technology that goes into all of this and the way that we've changed our building process over 10 years ago is just unbelievable. Having the opportunity to, like you, to go and speak and to work with other contractors all over the country and all over the world to share that information, I think is really key. But DuPont was great in hiring me in there at IBS. We talked about some drainage mats and everything else that are new to put on the outside of the house. Again, more breathability, drainability, the 4Ds, just making sure that, these houses and all these amazing products we're putting into them, whether it's a $10,000 front door, $2,000 front door, $20,000 worth of siding and such, you want it to last, the limited lifetime and the 30, 40 years and such that, these manufacturers are recommending they will. And by putting and designing the right system together to make sure all those components work well together is the only way to deliver that. And that's really what our focus is here, is making sure that, once we do it, we touch it once, we do it right. And, our clients, maybe we're not going to get callbacks, maybe we're not going to get another job immediately down the road, but we're going to get a referral. Yeah. And that referral means everything.
What's funny, so, I left on that Friday from the Builder Show, drove over to see my buddy Scotty in Riverside, and then drove up and met my architect buddy, David Applebaum, who we met via the show, actually, which is hilarious, and he's architect for the stars. So he's done, and he's been on the show before, but he's done all these things from, Frank Sinatra's house to Bob Hope's to Cuba Gooding Jr. and all these different celebrities that he's worked with. And across from his condominium, there was these 3 homes in Southern California being built, townhome type situation. And it was the weirdest thing because they had built them with literally 4 inches between each building. Well, the challenges of building stick frame stuff when you're 4 inches between the building. How are you going to get siding and stuff when you tilt the next wall up? And it was interesting, but I was watching how poorly this building was being constructed as far as the framing was great. But I pull up out front and I see windows installed, OSB around the whole exterior. They had wrapped little pieces of house wrap around in the windowsill, and it was sticking outside the window maybe 4 inches, and it was just roughly stapled up there. And that's all there was. There was no house wrap on the outside, but they had just kind of wrapped around the windows, put the windows in. And I'm looking at it going, man, you could already tell this thing was already going sideways, and they hadn't even started any siding project yet. And there's not really a good way to save it.
No, and the scary part about that is, okay, so that home wrap or whatever type of wrap it was, it's protruded and it's stapled off. And maybe it is good enough just to last for 4 or 5 years before, it starts wicking all that water and moisture back into that assembly. Mm-hmm. So as well as I do, after they're done delivering that building, everybody gets to live there happy or thinking they're happy for the next 4 or 5 years before any signs of anything major happen.
Yep.
And then we're going, hey, now we got a really big problem. because depending on what the exterior cladding is going to be, you could be millions of dollars into the repairs on that thing.
Oh yeah, especially when they do that, and it's Southern California, so you're going to see stucco or something going on the outside of that, and then the water's going to get around those windows, and now the rot process begins, and now that's where they see that $2 million fix on the outside of the buildings, and it's crazy, but for me, it's interesting. Like in Oregon here for building code, we have a very strong building codes division, and all of that flexible flashing and stuff is something that is part of the inspection process here. And,
that's fantastic to hear.
Yeah.
I wish everybody was like that. Could we just have a uniform code across the entire country?
Yep, we should. And the cool part is that are, like, for instance, if I was going to be a contractor, and I'm not, but if I was going to go out and get my contractor's license, it's a state-run, it's the Oregon Construction Contractors Board, and they require every year or 2 years, I can't remember which, to have like 8 hours of continuing education. Well, if you're a granite installer, they still force you to learn about water intrusion and the right way to do those connections, because that's part of the flat, everybody has to learn this as a contractor. And water intrusion is one of their big things, because, we do get some rain over here, but it's interesting to see that. And then, I deal with other states, and I don't know how it is in every state out in the East Coast, but like I was in Eastern Pennsylvania for the Ideas Show out there, and I'm talking to guys there, and they're like, well, we don't really have much of a state license. It's your contractor's license is through the city or township that you're working in.
Oh, wow.
And I'm like, wow, that's wild.
We're fortunate in Mass that we have the same scenario as you do. Is every 2 years, your license needs to be renewed. You have to have 12 hours, and it's mandatory that half that time be in a classroom setting. So you can't just be sitting there clicking a button at a computer, hoping that you've waited out the time lapse or whatever.
Yep.
So again, Massachusetts takes it very serious, which is good. But it took probably 7 or 8 years for us to get that through legislation and passed.
I know it, and I'm troubled in my own and torn a little bit with this stuff, because there's many times that I look at it that I'm very torn, that I'm like, I hate to have all this stuff, but I'll be honest, after watching when you get into areas like California and stuff, who is like the regulation capital of the world, they still haven't figured that out yet.
Right. Well, there's always stuff to learn and to improve on, and I think the key is, as long as we're always moving in the right direction and forward, right?
That, and and I think that continuing education stuff helps, because let's circle back to Dupont for a second. I mean, look at how far they've gone in 10 years.
It's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, they were just kind of like, okay, it's the Tyvek people with tape, and then all of a sudden they've gotten into, you've got all the straight flash products and all the different stuff, all the different,
roofing underlayments,
yeah.
You name it, everything to get to almost a whole house warranty, an envelope warranty.
And I think for contractors out there, that's super important. And what do you think? I mean, I've seen this too, and I wanted to get your take on it, because you're an expert in the field with this. I get out to job sites sometimes, and you get contractors that they're shopping at the lumberyard, they're shopping at Lowe's, they're shopping on Home Depot, Ace Hardware, True Value. And you show up out there, and there's not one system being used. They've got this brand of house wrap and this brand of flashing, and it's like, always makes me a little nervous when you start mixing in different brands. To me, I almost want to go, man, stick with a system and go.
You're 100% spot on as far as what my thought process is as well. And it is frustrating, and you get it. You understand that, hey, you know what? You're in a job site in one town, and your local lumberyard maybe 3 towns away that stocks the same system. And we'll use Dupont for an example, but I've got straight flash, and I got the flex wrap for my windows and such, and I'm using the drain wrap. Yep. And I'm going to put an exterior dowel board or a rock wool on top of it, depending on if I'm doing vapor open or vapor close. But the reality is, once you change and you take and you run out of that Tyvek tape just for our seam tape for our house wrap itself, for the drain wrap, and then you look at it and you're like, you know what? Well, I know that the local lumberyard right here stocks Typar, so I'm just going to get some Typar tape, because it's still the same acrylic tape, right? What's the big deal? Maybe, hopefully, it's all made by 3M or wherever. The reality is, maybe it's not. And maybe there's a chemical in there that's going to start to eat away any kind of adhesion that it would get and bond to this other type of product. So sticking with the same system is the only way to guarantee that it's going to be done right. And you can sleep well at night knowing it. And I think that's the piece that we forget about is just some guys out there, they want to do the right thing, but it's just too much to have all that stuff in stock or to go that extra mile to grab the same product. So anybody listening, I hope that if you do, order a couple extra rolls. Your lumberyard will take it back. Don't worry.
Yeah.
And if not, you'll use it on the next project.
Yeah, just stock the van up or truck or whatever and have it there. And it's the same theory to me as if you're doing shower systems, if you're jumping down the Schluter system or the Wetty system, just own that system and go with it. And then if you have a problem, you can actually address it with the manufacturer. One, if you had some kind of warranty. Two, if you had some kind of installation mishap that you didn't catch. If you've got a problem, you're guaranteed to have finger pointing, because the first thing any rep is going to do is when you insert another brand into the mix, they're going to go, well, that wasn't meant to go there.
Yeah. Yep. Completely defeats our install guidelines. So therefore, you're on your own.
Yeah. And when you're on your own, you're on your own. There's no big company helping you out. And, you're voted off the island at that point as far as helping get that problem solved. And so,
well, and think about that, at that point in time, your client confidence level. When they're looking at you going, oh, so the manufacturer's out here and you didn't install it right, or you didn't use their products, even though our contract said you were going to use these products?
You're in trouble. Yeah. I mean, that's next phone call you make is your insurance agent to see if you can get some help. I mean,
yes, the insurance bailout, please.
Yeah. But that's kind of where that goes, and it's such a simple bad mistake that happens in contracting that I think, and where you think, oh, it's just tape, it's not going to mix up. But think about years ago, I've run into this, I'm sure you've run into it more than I have, but you see people that put the cedar siding over the 20-year-old Tyvek, and then you pull it back and see how those didn't work well together.
Yep.
And in the early days, some people didn't understand or follow the directions of how that was going to work together or not work together. And things degraded because, well, you needed to have a different product back there.
Absolutely. And I mean, the cedar, I see it all the time on the coast and everything else, right? Tyvek has a 56 perm rating, so it's very breathable, which is great, but with wind driven and everything else and that cedar direct applied, it would have been a really nice process to put a drainage mat on top of it. And then you would have no issues whatsoever.
Yep.
When you go to pull that cedar back, you would be pristine and probably look darn close to the way it went on 20, 30 years before.
Yeah, and now I'll defend a lot of people. There wasn't a lot of those products 20 years ago. But at the same point, now if people out there that are doing that exterior work do their research, they have this thing called YouTube that you can find some good information on if you don't have anybody, because we have people that listen all across the country and maybe they're not going to make it to these shows, but to learn. But I think that's where you can really help from a builder, remodeler point of view. You can really set things up where you're going to be successful and have a product that you're not getting called back in 4 years, or you're dealing with an angry customer because they've got multiple failures around the exterior. And now they're looking at you going, we expected you to do it right.
And we have so many options now, right? Like you talk about in the YouTube, if you jump on that funny little thing called Google, you can find 10 different systems that work well.
Yep.
And just pick the one that you're most comfortable with, whether it's Henry Blueskin, it's a zip system, a Typar, Tyvek. There's so many different options and so many different install guidelines that, one may better suit you and the way you build over another.
Absolutely.
And especially the climate that you live in, right?
That's a big part of it.
That's a huge piece. If you're dealing with high winds and everything else, maybe the home wraps and everything else aren't the best option. And maybe doing a zip system or a self-adhered makes more sense.
Yeah, over here in Eastern Washington, my brother's a school teacher in the Yakima School District over here. And that's, for you, point of view, that's, 4 or 5 hours, 4 hours east of Seattle up there. So it's on the desert side. Well, they did this school remodel probably 5 or 7 years ago. And I think if I'm going out of memory, it's like Eisenhower High School in Yakima. So the architect specified this cool art wall because they have to have so many pieces of art and public displays over there. And so they did this cool art wall that was a metal that had this kind of blued iridescent finish to it. And they did this tall, big wall to make it look really cool that kind of matched the school colors, which was beautiful. The problem is the architect hadn't thought through that in the 110-degree summer that the surface of this metal was going to get hot, and they had directly had, a product. I don't know what brand it was, but let's call it. It's a flashing product like Straight Flash or one of those that was back there, where you've got this would have the tar layer. Well, the problem is after a couple of years, when the kids would come back to school, there was a layer of tar on the sidewalk below it because it was getting up into that 175, 180 degree temperature where it was melting the waterproofing product behind it. And so they had to spend I think a cool $1 million to get that taken care of. But yeah, I mean they waterproofed it correctly behind it, but didn't think of the climate and what the material was going to be, and they just didn't have the right waterproofing membrane back there. And even though it was done correctly, it wasn't done correctly for the climate.
Yeah, there's many a times when we're working on a commercial project with commercial architect and such, where we're here like, all right, we work from the finish to the beginning, because that's going to dictate what the system is that we're using. Same with some of our homeowners around here. It's like, what's your final exterior cladding going to be? Is it a cellular PVC? Is it a hardy panel? Is it cedar clapboard? Still on the coast, up in Nantucket and Cape Cod, we're still doing a lot of cedar shake. So it's like,
it's beautiful.
What will this be? Because that depends tremendously on how we design that system behind it.
See, in my house, it's going to be an interesting one because I've got a lot of different projects I'm doing. We just bought it. So it's 1977. 2x4 construction. It has a, just a R11, insulation in the walls and, 2x4, 16 on center. And the outside siding, and a lot of it is T111. And it's right over the steps.
Okay.
So
you got a fun project coming up.
You know where I'm going to that. It's got some tar paper that they put over the studs, directly over the studs, and then hit that. But, I've got 1977 T111 on the side, and I've got a lot of work to do on this thing because I'm not just going to re-side it. I'm going to be doing windows anyway. So now I'm like, I gotta really think about how far I want to take this, because being a contemporary styled house, in some of my areas, I only have a 4-inch overhang.
Oof.
So I can't really pop out and put rock wool out there, or, you see where I'm going with that. So I've got a lot of different choices to do on how far do I want to push this. And we're a moisture heavy area. I mean, I'm in Portland, Oregon. So we have, 5 months of rainy, and it's something that I've got to take into account. We don't get that cold. We don't get that hot, I mean, we can get, like this year, we didn't get below probably 25 for 2 days.
That's not bad then. I mean, so you're just dealing with bulk water management.
Yeah,
for the most part.
Absolutely. And so, but I want to get the house a little more tighter too while I do it. So I'm going to have some challenges with that. But that's some of the stuff that we run into here. You guys have more traditional overhangs in many cases, and so you've got some room to work. Some of our Northwest contemporary homes have no overhangs at all. So now you've got to deal with the roofing system just as quickly as you do the wall systems when you're trying to deal with this stuff.
Absolutely. We've done that for the longest time, working with capes around here.
Yep.
Just the fact that they were built with no overhang, and you're like, even if you try to go and do a reside, you're like, man, I want to at least pad this out with some insulation boards so everything lays flat, or we're stripping everything all the way down, which is how we prefer to do it anyways. But there's a lot of clients out there that don't have the extra $2,500 to $3,000 to strip the entire house.
Yeah.
And that's not what they're looking for. And sometimes they're not our clients, right? You'll find somebody down the road that will do that. But the reality is that means somebody's dealing with that house and just throwing a Band-Aid over the top of everything to make it look good.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
We find that we deal with those roofs right away, and we usually insulate the roof from the exterior and then the outside wall from the exterior, and then we'll put sleepers and build overhangs on top of it afterwards. But as you know, Eric, that gets costly by all means.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at here, because my next project, I think, before I do siding, is going to be roof, and I'm going to extend those out a little bit. And then, because I've got kind of multi-angled roofs on this house, I don't have the only real standard, what I'd call truss system, is my garage. And everything else is it's almost like little boxes with angled pieces of roofs on them that are single sloped, and it's not your typical intersecting type roof system. So I've got all these flat planes, which makes it a lot easier if I'm going to insulate above that and extend out my eaves. I've actually got some room to do that architecturally, so I can actually then deal with the siding and the insulating from the outside correctly.
Well, at least it sounds like you got some decent options in front of you.
You know the story, though, that a lot of these, there's a lot of them, but I'm going to have to do all of it to make those options work, because I can't just do one.
Right. Absolutely correct.
So what are you seeing out there as far as, you're building some new homes as well, aren't you?
Yes, absolutely. We have 2 in process right now, which we haven't slowed on those at all. The joy of being small, I know the commercial guys, you got 30, 40 guys on the job site and everything else. And in Mass, we're still essential and workforce, so we do get to work. I know you said out there, one side shut down completely, and in your area, construction still is viable. But the new homes, we haven't stopped on at all, because we're smaller crews. There's only 3 or 4 guys out on the job site, and we're just managing it with safety protocol and such. But new construction, other than people not coming out to see model homes or searching anything other than online, we haven't seen anything change there. But the remodels and everything else, we've definitely seen come to a halt. All the kids are home, so as much as people love to have us there, they don't want to interrupt their lifestyle as it is right now.
Yeah, I mean, I think right now would be a good time if you were a heating air conditioning contractor, or maybe a crawl space focused contractor. It might be a good time to be out hitting, because you're home. People aren't coming inside your house so much.
Right.
In many cases, at least out in our area out here, you've got a lot of their HVAC systems are in attics, basements, crawl spaces, and garages. So they're not so much in a living area. So if you had that, man, it'd be a good time to get those service work done, or a crawl space clean out where they're not inside your home. Your home, you can be working from home and people can be doing stuff, and you can probably get a pretty decent deal keeping people busy right now out there as well. But other than
Absolutely.
that, yeah, I don't want people crawling through the middle of my house either. I get it.
No,
I get it.
It completely understandable. And, again, with mini splits and everything else and technology changing in that realm, a great opportunity, because look, you're drilling, a 3-inch hole through the wall to put that head in and everything else?
Yeah.
Minimal impact on the inside of a house. So you're right. I think you're spot on with that. It's a great time for the HVAC companies out there.
And if you're doing it correctly, you could be getting around those rules a little bit too. If you've got somebody that has a system that's not working correctly, most of these areas that I'm seeing are allowing those kind of installations to happen. And if you're getting somebody kind of back up and running, so those emergency repairs, I know in at least Washington, where they shut it down, contractors can be working if there's immediate structural defect that needs to be changed, or you've got heating, electrical, plumbing, that kind of stuff that they're trying to keep moving so people can live comfortably.
The other area that I see and the joy for us about at least when this impacted all of us is that spring is here, right? So we have a lot more outdoor projects.
Sure.
I don't know about you guys, but the landscaping, outdoor living, I'm going to see more of those type of calls coming in, because they're not outside right now anyways. So if we're outside, it's fine. As long as they can use it when the warm weather is here consistently, then they're going to be all for it. And it's going to be space for their families to be using and enjoying while they're home.
That's a topic that I was literally just talking to somebody else that we know earlier, just an hour ago, because to me, one of the hot topics, I think, for 2020, 2021 is going to be outdoor living and controlling your environment outside. So what I mean by that is, for instance, in Portland, how do you keep it warm and dry so you can use it more often? If you got a windy area, how do you control that wind? Those kind of things. I think that is your least expensive square footage addition you can do to a house. And two, I think people really going to start thinking about, okay, the next time this happens, how better are we off?
I think you're spot on. There's no doubt about that. And I think the reality of the cost impact, when you're using pavers and such, or even a deck's a little more expensive.
Sure.
But at the end of the day, you gain so much usable space. And where do we want to be? We want to be outside. We want the fresh air. Everybody's going to go through this entire time and think about, having dealt with windows closed and poor folks that have been quarantined are going to be like, no, I definitely don't want to live like this again. So I think you're right on with that. And that's going to be a great seminar and session that you guys teach on that.
Oh, yeah. And one question for you, too, is this is kind of an interesting one for all the contractors out there. What are you doing during these times for marketing and getting yourself out there? Because as we know, I think it'd be a lot different than we were like in 2008, 2009, where we had a serious kind of, crash down of the market versus this is almost a natural disaster type of thing where I think the rebound is going to come a lot quicker. What are you guys doing out there to stay in the mix?
I think what I've seen a lot of contractors around here do, and we're a little different, right? Because 27 years in business and such, we don't do a ton of marketing because most of our business is referral based.
Sure.
And those referrals are still going to come in. They're probably going to be slower and everything else. The phone's definitely not ringing off the hook, with 10 or 15 calls a day like it normally is. But it's all right. Everything's slowed down. So we'll ride this wave just fine. But what I do see a lot of folks out there doing, and I think is really important, is just reaching out to the community, at the physical distance, the socially acceptable one, but just letting people know that you're there to help,
yep.
And that you're still, participating and vivid in the community and just be seen out there. I had one contractor that I saw the other day. He just did a little Facebook post and said that, before the quarantine or the stay in place was issued, that there's a lot of people that didn't have daycare.
Yep.
His wife is a stay-at-home mom. They have a huge yard, and she's been certified as far as daycare way back when, but just didn't use it. Nice. So he's like, listen, if anybody needs help, I'm not saying drop your kid off every day, but if you need help, just give us a call. And I think that's the kind of stuff that really hits home and reminds everybody that you're a good business. And that if you're really in need of any kind of home improvement, that maybe this is one avenue or one type of person because they've reached out in a different fashion.
Yeah, it was cool. One of my sponsors of my show here in Portland, Pyramid Heating and Cooling, did something that they posted up on Facebook this last week, and I was like, way to go, guys. They had this gentleman, I'm going to guess that he was in his 90s. And I could be wrong. Maybe he's in his 80s, but I thought maybe 90s. But long story short, this guy him and his wife had no hot water for 4 days.
Oh, my God.
And so they went out, and he couldn't afford for the full meal deal to get the water heater done. So the two guys came out there, the two installers went out there on their own time afterwards and installed it for him. And so he just had to pay for the water heater. And I'm like, okay. There we go. That's the stuff that's the good stuff that we should be doing out there to get people lined up and just being, quite frankly, good neighbors.
Yeah, absolutely correct. We did a quick little thing 2 weeks ago. Habitat for Humanity had reached out and said that, they're volunteers because of the numbers, not being able to be on a job site. They couldn't hold the crews and everything else and get the work done they needed. So, I talked to the team and they're here like, yeah, you know what, we're happy to go out and give a couple days when we have some downtime here, and just jumped on and helped a family that was already existing with an issue, and then jumped on a new construction and helped there as well.
Yeah.
And those are the things I'm talking about. Like you just said, I think that's the right terminology, is good neighbors. Just be there for each other.
And then my other point that I want to make to people out there that are in the construction and modeling business is, if you are in that, maybe not in that 27-year-old company that's fairly established, but if you're at that newer company and you're really concerned, I look back at my most successful growth times of businesses that I've had in the last 30 years. My biggest gains were made during times like this. Mm-hmm. Getting out, doing the right thing, advertising. If you look back in history, like during the great crash. And this is an interesting story that I always love to refer to, but back in the 20s, when we, came out of the roaring 20s and had just the Great Depression, you had two cereal companies that weren't really relevant because people were still eating at home and not getting into the cereal thing. But you had Kellogg's and Post, right? Well, Post went, whoa, we're gonna pull back and do everything else. Kellogg's went out, doubled their advertising budget, and said, hey, we're the cost-effective solution for people out there. And guess what? When the Depression was over, going into even World War II, they were 2-to-1 over the size of Post because they went out and said, we're going to spread our message. We're going to give people a real and honest, here, you can save some money by using our product instead of cooking these big breakfasts every morning. Here's another breakfast solution that'll save you some money. And guess what? They became the leader out there for the next 100 years on that. And it's amazing during these times that as a company, I think builders and modelers on the smaller scale should think about what they're doing because there are long-term consequences for what you're doing.
I love that story, and that is such a great one to be sharing with folks because, like you, I agree. During the downtime, 2008, 2009, I was the state president for our Home Builders Association, and I saw my company grow that year probably by 30%. And it was just because we didn't stop. And we have a tendency when stuff of natural disasters and circumstances like this fall into place to just kind of settle in. Listen, you're in your office, you have time, extra time. And I love that we're spending it with family, but this is an opportunity to refocus on your company and make sure that all the pieces that we wear too many hats already, right? But make sure all the pieces are lined up and that you do have a marketing strategy and that, oh, you know what? You were too busy. You're right. We've been pumping out proposals or you've been swinging a hammer for 12 hours a day and you just really wanted to get home and kiss the kids goodnight and have dinner with the wife and such. Well, now you got time during the day where you can focus on what's going to happen next. Because we may be slowing down a little bit with work right now, but once this is over, you got to be ready for the wave and that flood of work that's going to come in, and you want to make sure that your name's at the top of the list and people are calling you.
Absolutely. And if you're thinking about doing a remodeling project out there, there's no problem getting into a queue for people, Right. Call that builder remodeler. If you're going to be doing something in the fall when this stuff most likely is going to be, if you listen to the experts, should be fairly wrapped up. Even in the worst case scenarios that I'm seeing, get on the schedule for September 1st. Get on the schedule now because that way you're on the schedule. If you wait till August 1st to go get on something on September, and it's what many people are predicting, they're going to be asking you which September would you like to start?
Absolutely.
So doing that stuff and getting, doing that research from the homeowner point of view. And I don't think there's going to be a contractor out there that's not going to say, all right, well, let's get you through our process to get your name penciled in on the schedule, and then we can revisit it as time gets closer.
And there's not a contractor out there that will bark at that at all. They would love that, keep calling. We'd rather take the time up front to do all the planning. Eric, as a designer, what time goes into that and how many changes will evolve. So give yourself that time now. And you're already home. You're home with the family. So you get to talk and make all those decisions and do all that research.
Absolutely. One of the things, I got an interesting conversation at the Ideas Show. My buddy Jeff Devlin showed up, and he's done that Stonehouse Revival and I think a bunch of different shows on DIY Network, Bath Crashers, good buddy of mine. We got into the discussion, which I thought was an interesting one, of how he really hates free estimates.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, you got a hot subject there that I could talk on for hours about. But he's like, I hate going out to a house and I'm going to have to spend 15 or 20 hours on this maybe $300,000 or $400,000 remodel project, correctly estimating it out. And I'm going to work for 20 hours and not get paid.
Yep. Yeah, it's the downfall for our entire industry. When we have 10 or 15 bids that are due and we're looking at it going with just me and one other person in the office, like, wow, we don't have enough hours in the days to do all that. So you start to get into the danger zone of like square foot pricing and such. And you're like, well, this is only ready. And this is what we do for our clients this is just a ballpark. Yeah. And how many other people do you have bidding on it? And if you have more than 3 bidding on it, why don't you give me some names? Because if you already have someone that I know that's good, then let them do it.
Yeah.
But if not, then here, I'm going to charge you for my proposal. It's not an estimate. It's not a guesstimate. This is a proposal for your work to be done.
Yep.
But it's going to cost you because this is how much time is going to go into it. So it's just saying, I don't care what everybody else does. You and I will spend the time to work together to create the scope, because you're probably going to go to somebody else and get a number to guarantee that my number's right. Or by the time I'm done working with you, you're just going to feel so comfortable that you don't need to. So a quick little engagement letter says, hey, I'm going to design this for you. We're going to go through this and work together. And it's going to incorporate up to, 20 hours worth of labor. And here's the cost. So cut a check for $2,500 or $3,000, whatever it is, just so you have something.
Yeah. And then because otherwise, I mean, it's so crazy, especially when you're talking, it doesn't really matter if you're dealing with siding or a kitchen or bathroom. Are you going to pick a, very inexpensive $60 a square foot quartz, or are you going to jump up into $200 a square foot granite for the countertops?
Right.
All those things are super crazy when it comes down to that. And if you're not specifying that stuff, you have no idea what that's going to cost.
You don't. I mean, you would know best, because you have the niche part of a market, right? As far as kitchen cabinets and countertops. But when you look at your average builder, they're like, that's one more component out of the 400 that go into this house.
Well, I can take a kitchen, and I'm just going to say, if we do this inexpensive as a remodel, and I'm just going to set the low point, let's say it's $60,000 and you're putting in vinyl flooring and laminate countertops, and that's a $60,000 turnkey as a very entry-level kitchen. I can turn around and design that with premium products in that exact same space. And I'm not talking about doing other work, but just hiring products. I can make that $150,000 kitchen without even blinking.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's coming from the low-end Frigidaire appliances in the other one and throwing in, Sub-Zero Wolf, or, putting in that Blue Star range, or, the Samsung Smart Hub refrigerator, whatever. But the homeowner has as much is as much in the driver's seat of what that project's going to cost as a contractor is.
Absolutely are. And they, especially as clients, don't know what all these options cost.
Thanks, Home and Garden TV. You didn't do us a favor. Hey, we're going to flip this house and we're going to do it for $10,000. No, you're not.
Yeah, I love the folks on those shows. I just don't love those shows for that purpose. But yes, it does mean we have to do our job a little more diligently and educate our clients, right?
Yeah.
But
I have friends that do those shows, and I still harass them all the time when I see them, and I go, why is the production company doing that to us? Because as somebody out in the field, when you're working with people and they don't see that there was the craft-made truck that showed up delivering cabinets, and if you see the brand, then it's not in the budget because those were given for free.
Right.
Exactly. The Kenmore truck was delivering the appliances. Well, great. The appliances were free. And when you start taking half the budget and making it free, and then you throw in some free labor, you got a pretty inexpensive project when you're looking at hard numbers.
Yep, you most certainly do. And once you start taking away each one of those free things, it adds up really fast.
Well, they're always big ticket items, right? Otherwise, they would not be advertising like that in the show. So, if you take out a $5,000 to $10,000 cabinet package or a $5,000 to $10,000 appliance package, and all of a sudden you see the Dupont Corian countertops going in for free, and all of a sudden you're looking at things going, all right, you just took the big pieces of the materials budget out of the mix.
I love when I sit down with a client and they do their homework, right? And they've checked into the appliances they want. They've checked into the countertops. They checked into a bunch of the other components, the flooring. I just ran into this the other day. A client had picked out a Mohawk flooring that they liked, and I was all in agreement. We gave them a number on the flooring product because they had already researched all of it, right?
Yeah.
So they're here like, hey, and then they got the bill for the finished product, and they're like, well, why is this like twice as much? And I mean, like, well, you only priced the material.
Yeah.
I was like, you knew, here was our bid. Yeah, we didn't understand where that bid came from, but you had agreed that the number for the flooring was good. I mean, like, it was. That was a good number. That was, if I buy it from my supplier, very similar in cost of what I would charge you for it to begin with. So yeah, your number was spot on. I go, but we still had to rip out the old stuff and we still had to put the new stuff down. There's labor that goes involved. Yeah. So they did a great job doing their homework, figuring out how much their hard costs and material were.
Exactly.
And then got their heads stuck on that.
Yeah, it happens. How are they dealing with lead and asbestos out in your area? I mean, in Portland, we've got it pretty hard here in Oregon. I mean, we've got, and I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm just saying that it's different. Like, for instance, here, if we've got some interesting regulations which kind of mirror the federal stuff, but if I think it's 2000, if I go to the landfill here in the city with a truck full of building materials and I had drywall, flooring, and I have a project that was built before 2000, I think, I have to have a lead and asbestos certification that the product is clean.
Yeah, that makes sense. I actually stopped bringing my own stuff to the landfill. I have a beautiful dump trailer that sits in our yard and moves bobcats and stuff around instead, just because it was way easier for us just to order containers and dumpsters and allow all of those companies to manage that piece and those components. Because
here it's interesting because if you're going to order a container to get dropped off at the job site, they say, okay, where's your asbestos test and certification, saying that you had to have a professional come out, take tests, do the lab samples, make sure that none of that contains that before they'll drop the box off for you there.
Gotcha. No, we're not there yet, but I'm sure that's coming then, because anything that you guys do on the West Coast, Massachusetts is next to follow.
Yep, that's coming. And then the other one we've got here, which is kind of interesting, that just happened for City of Portland residents and the microeconomy of that. If you own a home before 1941 and you want to tear it down, you have to do it with a certified contractor that will hand deconstruct and reuse the building materials out of it.
Whoa, really?
So you can't, let's say you even had a fire that damaged the outside of it, and it was kind of one of those what they call zombie houses out there that's been pretty well trashed. Doesn't matter. You have to hire, from prior to 1941, you have to hire a contractor that is on the city approved deconstruction list that knows how to do it, and they come in and deconstruct that house so they can reuse the building materials that are reusable, and you cannot show up with the excavator and push it over.
So, and their purpose behind that is just saying they want to save all this historic lumber.
They want to reuse all they can, and I think there's also, and I don't want to speak so much for them, but my opinion is that they're also doing that, I think, to discourage those homes being pushed down.
Yes,
which is also interesting because they're also at the same time pushing to have these larger single family lots put into higher density stuff. In Oregon, they just changed it here for the state that basically exempted zoning laws for residential and said that now you can if you can fit 4 homes on a lot, then you can do it. So they've had some very conflicting stuff with that. So in one hand, they're making it expensive to push a house over to build the low income or entry level housing. They've also made it very expensive to do the same thing. So you've kind of got this weird yin and yang thing going off where the right hand's not fully understanding what's going on the left hand, because all of a sudden, maybe what cost $10,000 to come in and knock a house down and haul it off, you might have 50 or 60 in there. And then we have these development fees in Portland where when you file your building permit for the new house, I've seen plenty of builders seeing $75,000 development fees from the city to pay for the new permit.
Yeah.
Well, now you've added maybe $150,000 to the price of what could be an affordable house, and you haven't even moved the dirt yet.
And now it is no longer affordable at all.
So that's the challenge.
Yeah. Sounds like a serious case of the cart before the horse sometimes.
Yeah. And that's not how you're going to get affordable housing, throwing all those fees on there. But I do understand trying to want to reuse stuff, but I'm also talking to guys that are in that process that are builders and remodelers that are finding out that this old wood is not coming apart that easily. And so there's a lot of waste. You're not getting the you're not getting the right amount of materials out of that house, because by the time they get in there and cut it up, is it really that usable? When you've got, 75 or 100-year-olds nails holding stuff together, can you really pull it apart and let it be reusable?
Well, you had me sold when you said the second part is maybe they're trying to deter people from just demoing these, right? And maybe take a little pride in them, revamp them, maybe deconstruct a portion of it yourself, but then add on to it and make it your own. I totally get that. I embrace that. But I'm right on the in line with you as far as when you deconstruct these houses, and we've done it many a times just because we do try to save, and especially with kitchens, I don't care if the kitchen is 15 years old, those cabinets might be really good for somebody else. So we deconstruct them. We have a couple different charities here that'll come and pick them up afterwards and then sell them off or give them off to homeowners. So fantastic.
Yeah.
But there's so much damage that's done during that process that you're right. I bet you on that house, if you plan on walking out with 50% of those materials, you're probably 75% off. You're only going to walk out with 15 to 20% at best.
Yeah. It's just that yield is probably not going to come out of that like you'd expect it to, because, and I think also the other thing I think you got to take into account is worker safety. I mean, if you're up there trying to deconstruct a roofing system on a house and you don't know what you're doing, which I think is what they're trying to address by doing this with these certified people. And many times you have to have an asbestos technician on site, because now you're removing cabinets and maybe there's asbestos flooring under the kitchen that somebody put in that they just, overlaid it. Now you're having to take all this stuff back apart. So there can be a lot of hidden details, because, if somebody did the job right and said, oh, I'm going to leave that asbestos flooring, I'm just going to lay down another veneer of 1/4-inch plywood and put some new vinyl over the top of it instead of disturbing it, now you're having to deconstruct that. So that's another interesting part. Yep.
Yeah. You're definitely going to have your hands full with that out there.
So I think that's one of those things that I think might go across the country. I'm curious to see how this experiment here works, to see if it's actually doing what they maybe anticipate it to do. That's my thing. So,
well, we'll keep an eye out for that by all means, because Massachusetts, we have our own board that reviews everything. And there's still a few things for, Boston areas and different things that they make all of their own code or amendments to the code, of course. Sure. But, I would, we have some of the oldest housing in history.
I love
New England,
that there.
Right?
I love New England for that. I mean, here, if I'm working on a 1905 house, that's a rare deal out here. We do have 1800 houses, but I mean, for us, that's an old house, and for you guys, that's a new house.
Yeah, exactly. So
Very
we'll
cool.
see how that plays out.
Absolutely. Walt, thanks for coming on the show, brother. I appreciate it.
Anytime, brother. Happy to. This was a blast. We should do it again.
We're gonna do this again. Next time we're gonna do this, you and I are gonna be sitting in a pub someplace, and we'll do it over cocktails, and we'll record it. We'll do a happy hour segment.
Well, that beer will be on me, buddy.
Hey, sounds good. Thanks for coming on the show, buddy. I appreciate it. Walt Tomala, TNT Contracting. Thanks for coming on, brother.
Take care, brother.
Thanks, man. Thanks for listening to my interview with Walt Tomala from TNT General Contracting. You can always catch him and I working together on plenty of stages across the country doing our public speaking to contractors, the trade, and designers. So thanks for listening to this first episode of the Around the House Pro Insider. Stay tuned to next week. Every single Thursday, we'll have another episode where we're doing interviews, talking trades, talking construction, talking design, and everything in between. Thanks for listening to Around the House Pro Insider.
Around the House with Eric G. is produced by Designed by Eric G. in association with Salem Media and distributed nationally by the Sun Broadcast Group. All rights reserved. Copyright 2020 Designed by Eric G. We will be back next week. If you missed part of the show, check out the podcast of all of our shows at AroundTheHouseOnline.com. Remember, measure with a micrometer, mark with caulk, and cut with an axe. Thanks for listening to Around the House.